What if everything you dedicated your life to, every horse, every stable, every acre, was handed over to someone else in a single chilling sentence? In the final pages of Queen Elizabeth II's private will, a revelation has surfaced that has shaken the royal bloodline. Every equestrian estate, from Sandringham's sacred paddocks to Windsor's hidden training grounds, has been left not to Princess Anne, the lifelong rider and Olympian, but exclusively to Zara Tindall. The betrayal, it seems, was inked long before Anne even saw it coming. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with a sealed envelope delivered under armed security to the Royal Council chamber. Inside was a copy of Queen Elizabeth II's private will, one so closely guarded it hadn't even been catalogued by the Royal Archives. At first, nothing seemed out of place. Standard bequests, acknowledgements, and farewells. But then came a section labelled Equestrian Holdings. Advisors leaned in. Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, and a woman whose entire identity was forged on horseback, was expected to be named steward of the royal stables. Instead, 6 lines down, it was Zara Anne, Elizabeth Tindall, Anne's own daughter, who appeared as the sole heir to the Queen's entire equestrian estate. Not a share, not a co-stewardship, but full, unchallenged ownership. The room reportedly went silent, gasps stifled. One witness later described it as the moment the monarchy held its breath and forgot to exhale. Within hours, whispers became wildfire. The Queen's decision had bypassed the woman who had carried the royal equestrian standard for 5 decades. Anne, who competed in the 1976 Olympics, who kept the ancient riding traditions of the crown alive, was nowhere in the equation. The properties in question weren't symbolic assets, they were sprawling estates across Britain, from Sandringham's gallop tracks to the elite stables tucked inside Windsor's private walls, worth tens of millions and infused with generations of prestige. That these were now placed solely in the hands of Zara, an Olympic medalist in her own right, but unburdened by royal duty, sent shockwaves through the upper echelons of the palace. There was no formal announcement. Buckingham Palace chose silence, but silence only deepened the tension. Anne's schedule was abruptly cleared. Royal engagements were cancelled under the vague explanation of rest. Behind closed doors, insiders say, the Princess Royal was visibly shattered. Some claim she walked out of the meeting without a word, her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. Staff said she locked herself in her quarters for hours, refusing all contact except for a brief, heated call with her brother Charles, who was reportedly just as blindsided. Attempts were made to shield the media from the truth, but by then, the leak had slipped beyond containment. Anonymous sources revealed the will's contents to high-level journalists, describing them as a bombshell deliberately timed. Was this the Queen's final act of love for Zara, or a cold, calculated departure from royal tradition? No one could say for sure, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just a transfer of assets. It was the symbolic erasure of Anne's legacy in a realm she had defined. And yet, amidst the devastation, a bigger question began to loom. Why? But what led the Queen to make such a seismic decision, and why was Anne, of all people, excluded from a legacy she helped define? For decades, Princess Anne was the face of royal equestrianism. She wasn't just a daughter, she was a champion, a trailblazer. So why did her mother, in her final act of sovereignty, erase her from the one legacy they shared? The answer lies not just in horses and heritage, but in a buried fracture between mother and daughter that no one dared speak of. Until now. Princess Anne carved her name into history long before Zara ever took the reins. In 1976, she stood alone as the first British royal to compete in the Olympics. Rain, pressure, politics, none of it shook her. She was a fortress of composure and control, the Queen's embodiment of discipline on horseback. Every stride she took on the equestrian field was a symbol of royal fortitude. For a time, the Queen was her shadow, watching from the sidelines, clapping softly, never interfering. But over the years, something began to change. Whispers behind closed doors suggested that after the 1990s, Queen Elizabeth began distancing herself from the world that had once bonded her to Anne. She no longer attended events. Her letters of encouragement to Anne became fewer, briefer. colder. No one knew why, but Anne felt it. What began as a subtle silence turned into a quiet storm. Their conversations, once peppered with admiration and shared memories of early riding lessons at Balmoral, grew tense. Anne's style, disciplined, firm, and steeped in tradition, no longer resonated with her mother's evolving vision. She clung to legacy. Zara, however, embraced evolution. She partnered with corporate sponsors, blended royal prestige with modern branding, and brought attention from younger audiences. The Queen, despite her age, had always been a monarch attuned to changing tides, and slowly those tides began to favor Zara. Palace staff noticed. One senior aide recalled how the Queen once brushed aside Anne's proposal to preserve the Royal Riding School as a heritage site, stating flatly, "That's Anne's world, not the world as it is now." A deeply personal statement spoken like a monarch, yet echoing a mother's painful judgment. Tensions flared privately. Reports emerged of a disagreement in early 2021 when Anne questioned the Queen's decision to sell off part of a royal stud farm. That land was sacred. Anne allegedly said it was never about money. The Queen replied, "It's about relevance, Anne." To the public, Princess Anne remained stoic. She shook hands, unveiled plaques, and kept her calendar full. But inside, something was beginning to unravel. The woman who once defined the monarchy's unbreakable will was now questioning her place within it. If she wasn't the heir, and she wasn't the equestrian torchbearer, then what was she? The Queen's will didn't just strip Anne of property, it exposed an identity crisis decades in the making. The heartbreak wasn't about land, it was about recognition, about knowing that even after a lifetime of unwavering duty, she was still seen as expendable. The very horses she raised, the stables she helped restore, the legacy she believed she'd protected, had all been reassigned. And her mother had made that decision in silence. But if Anne was excluded, what exactly did Zara do to claim such towering trust from the Queen? She was the royal rebel, no title, no duty, no palace burden. Yet when the Queen looked to pass down her most treasured possessions, it wasn't to Anne or even Charles. It was to Zara. What did the Queen see in her granddaughter that Anne could never show her? For years, Zara Tindall danced at the edge of royalty, close enough to feel its weight, but far enough to outrun its expectations. No HRH, no state tours, no daily briefings from palace aides. She had the Windsor blood but lived like a woman unshackled. While others bowed to centuries of tradition, Zara chose freedom. And it was precisely that freedom, that audacity to live beyond the royal cage, that began to intrigue the Queen in her twilight years. Far from the cameras, in the secluded tranquility of Balmoral, something unexpected unfolded. A quiet, consistent mentorship between sovereign and granddaughter. No fanfare, no photos, just early morning rides, candid conversations, and a mutual understanding rooted in something far deeper than title's vision. Palace insiders speak of a series of private meetings stretching over a decade. It wasn't unusual, they say, for Zara to arrive quietly through side entrances. What was unusual were the envelopes she left with thin, sealed and marked in the Queen's personal hand. Some were believed to contain estate evaluations, land plans and reports from Royal Equestrian accounts. Others were never traced. Staff at Windsor noticed changes too. Zara brought in elite trainers, restructured the stables, and invited international advisors once kept at arm's length. She spoke not of nostalgia, but of innovation. And the Queen, so often dismissed as rooted in the past, watched it all with a rare gleam in her eye. "She's what I might have been if I hadn't worn the crown," she once reportedly said. That admiration ran deeper than many realized. While Anne represented discipline and duty, an image molded to fit the monarchy's unyielding structure, Zara radiated something else. Defiance with grace. She didn't serve the institution, she rewrote her place beside it. To the Queen, Zara wasn't simply a granddaughter, she was a mirror, reflecting back a version of herself that never had the chance to exist. And that connection, invisible to the world but unmistakably powerful, began to shift the balance of trust behind palace walls. When others were managing protocol, Zara was rebuilding barns. When others gave speeches, Zara was in the mud with the horses. The Queen didn't want a monument to her legacy, she wanted it to breathe, to evolve, to race forward into the future. And so, when the decision was made, when the Queen sat with her legal counsel and restructured her will, it wasn't made lightly. It was made emotionally, boldly, perhaps even selfishly, but not without purpose. Zara wasn't chosen by accident. She was chosen because she didn't ask for it, because she had already proven she didn't need it to survive. And in that, the Queen saw not a gamble but a guarantee. And yet, behind Zara's inheritance lies a chain of whispered confrontations and shattered bonds. Witnesses described the moment Anne read the will as a silence so loud it echoed off the palace walls. This wasn't just a loss of property, it was a disowning of soul, identity, and maternal connection. What followed was a quiet unraveling, hidden from cameras, but devastating in its depth. Behind the fortified stone of royal protocol, Anne shattered in silence, the woman known for her unflinching composure, for riding into storms both literal and political, collapsed behind locked doors. For nearly 48 hours, not a single soul saw her. Staff whispered of untouched food trays left at her door. Curtains remained drawn. It wasn't grief in the traditional sense, this was something more primal. It was the mourning of an identity she never questioned until now. The Balmoral riding trails where she had once galloped alongside her mother had been handed over. The Sandringham stables she spent decades preserving were no longer hers to walk through. Every bridle, every saddle, every hoofprint had been assigned a new legacy, and it didn't include her. Rumours swirled of what happened next. 2 phone calls, one to Charles, the other to Edward. Not diplomatic, not restrained. Those close to the situation described Anne's voice as shaking but sharp, like steel just pulled from fire. Her words were direct. She wanted answers. Why wasn't she informed? Why had no one questioned it? Charles, already consumed by his own burdens, was said to be stunned into silence. Edward reportedly tried to calm her, only to be cut off when Anne declared, "This wasn't about horses, this was about trust." Her voice may not have cracked, but those who heard her said something far more heartbreaking came through defeat. But amid the silence and betrayal, one figure emerged quietly, deliberately: Princess Catherine. The bond between Anne and Catherine had always been one of respect, not sentiment. But that changed in a single conversation. Catherine, herself no stranger to the brutal undercurrents of royal life, offered not pity, but presence. They spoke for hours away from press, aides, and advisors. It was in that conversation, sources say, that Anne first admitted the deeper wound, not that she had lost something, but that she had been overlooked by the one person whose acknowledgement mattered most. Catherine didn't offer solutions, she offered solidarity. And for Anne, that was enough to begin breathing again. The palace scrambled to control the fallout. A press blackout was ordered. Scheduled appearances were cancelled with vague excuses. Media inquiries were met with clipped replies. But behind palace gates, a very real reckoning was unfolding. Anne, once the unshakable pillar of the monarchy, had been brought to her knees not by scandal or politics, but by the very family she served without question. The devastation wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It seeped into every corridor of the monarchy, leaving a tension no statement could diffuse. And while Anne remained publicly absent, a deeper realization began to surface. This wasn't an isolated decision. This was a signal, a seismic one. But what if this devastation wasn't just personal? What if it exposed deeper secrets about how the Queen planned her succession? Buried in obscure royal documents lies a covert codename, Operation Equinox. What seemed like a mere allocation of land was actually part of a succession blueprint engineered by the Queen herself. And it didn't just favour Zara, it actively pushed Anne out of royal planning. The revelations didn't stop at the will. Weeks after Anne's collapse behind closed doors, internal memos began surfacing. Legal aides working through the Queen's confidential files stumbled upon an innocuous folder marked with a name that would soon redefine the future of the monarchy: Operation Equinox. At first glance, it appeared logistical notes on property transfers, stable renovations, and scheduled land surveys. But a deeper look revealed something else entirely. This wasn't about maintenance, it was about mapping the future. These weren't simple estates being passed down, they were being reassigned with surgical precision, aligned to a long-term strategy that seemed designed to quietly reshape the royal family's internal structure. Anne's name was curiously absent from every draft. Zara, however, appeared at every turn. The code name itself, Equinox, suggested balance, but the question whispered through palace corridors was, balance against what? Or more importantly, whom? The Queen, it seemed, was attempting to recalibrate something long overdue. In an institution defined by age, hierarchy and duty, she was planting a seed of modernity Zara. Not the elder generation, not the conventional heirs, but someone who lived in the real world, understood sport, brand, audience, and above all had nothing to lose. Operation Equinox quietly positioned Zara as the face of a new equestrian monarchy, one not shackled by outdated protocol, but empowered by reinvention. Then came the sponsorships. Documents showed the Queen had pre-approved financial alignments with global brands connected to equestrian sports brands that had been slowly building ties with Zara for years. These weren't just personal deals, they were revenue-generating frameworks tied directly to the estates themselves. The stables were no longer just symbols of heritage, they were now commercial engines, future-facing, profitable, smart. And at the center of it all, Zara, operating without title, but with full royal permission. Financial analysts within the monarchy flagged another chilling trend: trusts. Buried beneath shell foundations, some dating back to the Queen Mother's era, were high-value portfolios now activated in Zara's name. It became impossible to ignore the pattern. Queen Elizabeth hadn't just been preparing a private will, she had been executing a silent succession plan that circumvented the traditional royal machinery. Charles had no say, Anne had no idea, and the royal institution had no defense prepared. In hindsight, palace observers began connecting the dots: why Anne's proposals for preserving royal stables were quietly dismissed, why the Queen had insisted on private visits with Zara at Balmoral, why equestrian advisors were replaced with outsiders hand-picked by Zara. It had all been unfolding under their noses. The Queen's strategy was quiet, but deliberate. She wasn't just managing an estate, she was curating a legacy with a different kind of air. As whispers of succession spread, the spotlight turns to Anne's next move. Silence or retaliation. It was bound to happen. Two women, mother and daughter, bound by blood, torn by betrayal, and when they finally came face to face inside the private royal library, it wasn't just words exchanged. It was decades of unspoken pain unleashed in a thunderous clash. The meeting at Gatcombe Park was never on the schedule. It wasn't announced. It wasn't briefed. It wasn't meant to exist. But it happened. Behind gates locked tighter than ever, Anne summoned Zara not with a request, but with an unspoken command. The estate staff were dismissed for the day, sent off with vague orders that no one questioned. And in the silence that followed, the air grew heavy with history. Anne had waited weeks, not for explanation, but for confrontation. And when Zara arrived, she found her mother already seated, not with tea or pleasantries, but with the Queen's will spread across the table like a battlefield map. Anne didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her voice was cold, sharp, weaponized with restraint. "Did you ask for this?" she demanded, staring straight through her daughter. Zara didn't flinch. She'd anticipated this moment, and perhaps feared it too. Her reply came just as steady: "She gave it to me because I wouldn't turn it into a museum." That single sentence pierced through the room like a bullet. Anne's knuckles clenched, and the floodgates broke open. Years of loyalty, duty, sacrifice, all reduced to a suggestion of irrelevance. The stables she preserved, the heritage she guarded, the name she defended, it was all, in Zara's words, outdated, obsolete. What followed was a storm of words, accusations that had waited a lifetime to be spoken. Anne accused Zara of ambition dressed as innocence. Zara fired back that Anne had lived her life for duty, not legacy, that she protected history but never evolved it. Voices rose, furniture shook, and somewhere beneath the anger, grief roared its silent protest. Because this wasn't about land or even favor, it was about something deeper. A mother who had never truly said, "I'm proud of you," and a daughter who had stopped waiting to hear it. There were no apologies, no handshakes, no understanding reached. Only two women standing at the edges of a cliff carved by a monarch they both loved, and who had, intentionally or not, forced them to choose between inheritance and identity. The confrontation ended not with closure, but with a door slammed so hard a painting rattled off its nail. Zara left first, and didn't move for hours. The staff returned the next morning to find the library untouched, as if nothing had happened, but the fracture remained, raw and bleeding beneath the surface. And in that aftermath, as the dust settled over Gatcombe, royal archivists back at Windsor uncovered something that would change everything again. Because buried inside a sealed envelope at the bottom of the Queen's private safe was a clause no one had seen, no one had expected, and no one was prepared to face. But while emotions burned inside the palace walls, another shock was waiting in the shadows, an unseen clause buried deeper in the Queen's final papers. Just when Anne thought the final blow had landed, lawyers uncovered a second codicil in the Queen's will, one that was never meant to be seen by public eyes. What it revealed could shift everything again, and this time Anne might have leverage no one expected. It happened late one evening inside the Royal Archives, during what was intended to be the final sweep of Queen Elizabeth's classified estate records. A slim, unmarked envelope had been misfiled, wedged behind a stack of outdated parliamentary documents. When it was opened by legal counsel, the contents were both brief and explosive. It bore only a title, Codicil B, and within it, a reference known only to those who lived behind palace gates, HRHPR. Palace shorthand, Princess Royal, Anne. The implications were immediate. This wasn't an oversight, it was intentional, and it had been hidden, sealed under restricted eyes, almost as though the Queen herself had hesitated to make it official. The contents didn't return full ownership of the Equestrian estates to Anne, but it did something no less powerful. It granted her lifetime access to several of the most historic royal stables, specifically those connected to Queen Victoria's breeding program and the Royal Riding School Anne helped rebuild decades ago. These were not ceremonial nods, they were tactical footholds. More shockingly, the codicil ended with a handwritten line from the Queen herself. 5 words. Simple. Cryptic. Loaded with consequence for your silence. No more. Whether it was an apology, a warning, or an attempt to buy Anne's compliance is still fiercely debated among insiders. The royal family was blindsided. Charles, already on edge over the earlier revelations, reportedly erupted in fury. He summoned the legal team to a closed-door meeting and demanded an immediate audit of every private correspondence linked to the Queen's estate. Behind his outrage, however, lay a deeper fear. If this codicil had been buried, what else had the Queen hidden? What other secrets waited to unravel the fragile order she left behind? For Anne, the document became both a curse and a weapon. Some advisors urged her to use it to challenge the will in court, to force Zara into public confrontation, to reclaim what was rightfully hers. But others warned her of the cost. To expose the Queen's veiled intentions would be to stain a legacy already hanging by threads. To fight would be to fracture the family even further. And yet, for the first time since the inheritance was announced, Anne had something that made the palace nervous: power. Within days, her legal team began quietly reviewing precedent. Options were being weighed: public image versus private justice, legacy versus principle. Anne remained silent, but her presence grew louder. She returned to the stables she had been locked out of, not as an owner, but as a figure who could no longer be erased. The crown hadn't expected her to rise again. And yet here she was, granted access not by entitlement, but by buried truth. As the royal family teeters on the edge of legal warfare, one unexpected voice emerges from the silence: Princess Catherine. When the monarchy fractures, it often takes an outsider to bind it back. Together, in the chaos of inheritance, betrayal, and royal scars, Princess Catherine steps forward not as queen in waiting, but as a woman who understands loss, pride, and duty. It wasn't a royal command. It wasn't even a formal request. It was a personal invitation, handwritten in Catherine's own pen, delivered without fanfare to both Anne and Zara. Anne Mahal, neutral ground. A place far removed from Windsor's cold legacy and Gatcombe's emotional wreckage. It was there, inside the warmth of a private sitting room, that the three women met no advisors, no press officers, no heirs or titles, just three pieces of a broken legacy searching for meaning in what remained. Anne arrived cautious, guarded. Zara came tense but willing. Catherine was calm, steady, her role not as mediator, but as mirror reflecting to both women what the Queen never said aloud. There were no speeches, no dramatic proclamations, but there were truths. And Catherine didn't speak them with authority, she spoke them with grace. You both were her pride, in different ways, she said, and in that single sentence, something shifted. Anne blinked hard, holding back tears she'd long buried. Zara looked down, unsure of what to say. Catherine continued, her voice soft but anchored in conviction. She didn't leave a perfect legacy. None of us do. But if we tear it apart from the inside, there will be nothing left to honor. The silence that followed wasn't tense, it was healing. What emerged from that meeting wasn't a solution, but a beginning. Catherine proposed a joint equestrian event, one held under the Queen's name, with both Anne and Zara standing side by side. It wouldn't undo the codicil. It wouldn't rewrite the will, but it could rewrite the narrative. Show unity where division had taken root. Give the public and the family a chance to breathe. Anne hesitated. For a woman who never faked sentiment, the idea of standing publicly with the daughter who had unknowingly dethroned her was a heavy ask. But then, something softened. Maybe it was Catherine's sincerity. Maybe it was the memory of the Queen riding through the hills of Balmoral, alone. Anne nodded. For her, she whispered. Zara agreed with a quiet, "It's time." And so, for the first time in months, the two women appeared in public not as adversaries, but as stewards of a legacy too sacred to destroy. They didn't hold hands. They didn't smile for the cameras. But they stood together. That in itself was historic. A fragile peace had been brokered, one not signed in ink, but earned in understanding. Catherine, ever the quiet force, watched from the edge, not needing credit, only knowing the damage had been paused. But even as unity appears to return, the final chapter of this story still waits in the Queen's private journal, locked away until now. Tucked into the final pages of Queen Elizabeth's private leather-bound journal was a handwritten confession that changes everything. Not just about her intentions, but about her regrets. And it begins with 7 haunting words: "I failed Anne in my own way." The journal was never meant for public eyes. Archived in a locked drawer within the Queen's personal study at Windsor, it had remained untouched since her passing. Only a handful of aides knew of its existence, and even fewer were granted access. But when one of them, disillusioned by the chaos her death had unleashed, eked a copy of its final pages to a trusted royal biographer, the monarchy found itself confronting a truth no one was prepared for. In that final entry, written in the Queen's unmistakable hand, the lines bleed with guilt. She spoke not as a monarch but as a mother, and in doing so, she unraveled the emotional knot that had silently strangled the bond between her and Anne for decades. She wrote, "I failed Anne in my own way, not for lack of love, but out of fear. Fear that she would carry the past forward without questioning it. Fear that she would protect the walls instead of opening the gates." It was the kind of raw honesty no one had ever heard from the Queen in life, an admission that she had misjudged the daughter who gave her everything. In the same entry, she called Zara the flame that would ride forward, a symbol of progress she quietly nurtured while holding Anne at a calculated distance. The favoritism wasn't imagined, it was real, and now painfully laid bare in ink. But it was a dream she wrote about that left the most profound mark. A recurring vision, she confessed, of Anne riding alone through empty royal fields. No horses, no fences, just vast, open land and the echo of hoofbeats swallowed by silence. She interpreted it as a warning, that if Anne continued alone, guarding traditions in solitude, her legacy would vanish into the quiet. "Zara is not her replacement," the Queen wrote. "She is the branch that may survive the coming winter." But it was Anne who planted the roots. Her final words were not commands, but hopes. "May they find each other in the legacy I leave. I could not give them the same love in the same way, but they carry equal pieces of me. Perhaps one day they'll see that The journal has since been sealed within the royal archives, but the leak ensured the world would never forget what it contained. And now, the public sees the full picture. This was never just about property, power, or inheritance. It was about wounds left unhealed, love left unspoken, and a dynasty that learned far too late that silence between women can echo louder than any crown. The horses may now run under Zara's name, but the shadow they cast is one of sacrifice, silence, and a sisterhood still learning how to heal. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.